Episode 9 of Prison School really teaches us something important, and that right there is to never underestimate the power of a nipple, because for some reason that right there plays such a heavy part in this episode. Now obviously with like Prison School, the comedy was always there, but once again another episode where I was like pretty much surprised, because I thought for sure that these boys would like, get this data and clear their names, but no, that right there did not work out at all. And so we see now at the beginning of the episode, it pretty much continues on from last week, where we have the vice president, now falling because her panties had tore while she was hanging from that doorknob. And so we see now that the president helps her up, and we have Hannah offering her leggings. And when we see her in them, inside the vice president's mind, I will say she definitely looked weird while she was like wearing them. But we see that afterwards, we go back to the boys, and of course, right now they are very depressed because they believe that they're going to get kicked out of school. And so of course most of them, feel like giving up. But we have Kiyoshi. He was the only one staying positive, and of course he was the one that got the other guys to get motivated, and that way they can work toward clearing their names, and that way they can stay in school, because really their real goal is to go to one of those, I believe it was the summer event where they have these wet t-shirt contests. And we see now that when they were in the middle of a cheer, we have the vice president bringing them their dinner. And so we see that when they all got their food, Kiyoshi here had dropped his chopsticks, and we have the vice president bending over because she had dropped her panties that she had hanging in her pockets. And so we see now that when Kiyoshi had looked up, he had got a face full of moon, because of course he can see her down area, and of course he saw her butt as well. And so right now he was thinking that if Shingo got beat up for just seeing some panties, and I also believe that he told him about the cleavage as well. He was so scared about what they might do to him if he tells them, what he saw. And so right now he will stay silent about this. And so we see that this time, when they had their cheer, once again, all their minds were sync, and they were all thinking about the same thing. But of course, Kiyoshi had what he just saw on his mind, and that right there, threw it off. And the other guys had called him out on that. But of course, he was playing it off. And so we see now that all of them were thinking of some way that, they can go into the correction office, because that right there is where they believe they can find the info on DTO, and that right there will lead them to clearing their names. And so right now none of them really had any good ideas, because there was just no time that they could sneak in there. But luckily Four Eyes here came up with a pretty good plan, because we have seen throughout the anime that the vice president, she is a monster. This girl has some serious strength, and we see her use that time and time and again on the boys. And so we have Four Eyes getting the idea of using her own strength against her. And we even see now that the first thing she does when she wake up is train, because we saw her wake up at 6 a.m. and she was doing these handstand sit-ups, handstand push-ups, and that right there was impressive. And I will say that the censorship is definitely getting a bit too much. Now of course I have seen worse, but for this anime, I do wish that it really would have aired on a station that would show this uncensored. But of course this right here will definitely help boost the sales when it come out on DVD and Blu-ray. But we see now that their plan was now in motion, where we have the vice president checking on them, because right now they actually stopped doing their labor work, because she had told them the previous day that the regular council had agreed on their expulsion. So of course now they were definitely going to get kicked out in those 2 weeks as soon as the chairman used his seal of approval. But we see that before that they all had this arm wrestling contest going on, And of course, Andre, being the biggest guy, he was like winning. And we see now that when the vice president, had walked by, that right there is where they started, praising, Andre, and they were like putting down the vice president because, even though she's strong, they were saying that like she's a woman, so of course she cannot be Andre, and that right there definitely annoyed her. And we see her now, actually giving in to them, and we see her, having this like now going against all the boys because of course they had to like stall for time, and we see Frost was first. And he easily, got beat. And then we have Kiyoshi trying as well. But we see that when Kiyoshi was like going to lose for the first round, they actually, they actually kicked in the table, and that way it made it fall. And we see now Kiyoshi fell right into her chest. But more importantly, he actually took a nipple right to the eye. And I don't know why, but that right there had me dying. And we see now, luckily, Four Eyes here stole the keys while like they were on the ground, and we see that when Kiyoshi and the vice president had their round two, this time he could like see her nipple again, and that right there definitely took him out the match because we see that after he came back from nipple land, let's call it that, we see him now with the arm so bent out of shape. I felt bad for the guy, but then we have Shingo who had lost in like not even a minute, and Joe lost in a second. This guy went like freaking flying, like that right there was like also hilarious. But finally it came down to Andre and the vice president. And their match, it went a lot longer than I thought it was. And we see now that Four Eyes, he was now in the correction office, and of course he was like trying to get the program to download that would possibly bring back the emails. And we see it was like taking forever, and that right there was definitely not a good sign. But we see that Andre and the vice president, they were actually pretty matched. But then we have the vice president getting distracted by Andre's nipple hair. And I definitely have never seen someone analyze this so freaking much. She was saying that hair had like reminded her of a tree in a desert. And then we see that, whenever Andre would get, all worked up and snort, that right there caused his hair to like way back and forth. And then we see her now thinking of a tornado, coming in there. And she was just so fascinated by it. To me, I never thought I would see that. I thought for sure she would like beat him easily, but at least because of that, because of that, those two were like going back and forth. Sometimes, she would get close to beating him, but then, she would lose strength, and that right there will allow a comeback. And we even see that, while she was like, abusing him verbally, that right there was like also weakening Andre. And so we see that at one point, he cannot take it anymore, and eventually he had yelled out, and that right there, pretty much gave the vice president the win, because she had realized that if she did not want to, see that hair anymore, she only had to not look at it, and that right there made her close her eyes. But it was like definitely weird when she realized that she was like blushing and smiling. Now, I'm pretty sure that the vice president doesn't like Andre or would like fall for him, but if she did, that right there would like really be something. But of course, because of Andre's yelling and he lost, and then we have the vice president, realizing that her keys were now missing. That right there definitely raised a lot of red flags. But we see that, when she had looked around and couldn't find Four Eyes, obviously she was like going to go to the office, but he was right there, with the keys in hand, because he had pretended that she had dropped them. And so now we learned that because, Andre screaming and, gave it into that verbal abuse, Four Eyes here was not able to get the data, even though it was like probably there. And so right now, the boys gonna get kicked out. It's pretty much confirmed. and we all have them now on, I believe, like probably close to their final day, or, like definitely one of their final nights. They were all talking, and we have, and we have Four Eyes here really, really, even though it was a nice moment, it was definitely pretty sad for the guys, because right now they are all connected and like true friends, and it's pretty sad that now that their, high school lives are pretty much over, especially, after all they have been through, like that whole, like the whole ordeal with Kiyoshi and Chio. We have Shingo being used. We had what's his name, Joe. Joe almost going crazy over his aunts. We have Four Eyes here, getting his hair cut off, and we have Andre not being abused, and that right there pushed him over the edge. And finally in this episode, he actually got what he wanted again. But now, like all of them are now reflecting on their lives or high school life, because of them, it's pretty much over. But hopefully, something big will happen, because right now I don't read the manga, but I definitely know that, even though this plan did not work, something will like come to light that will like save their butts. But I have no idea what it is, but I cannot wait to find out. But this episode, to me, it was like decent. It like to me, the whole armors thing, I thought it could have been shorter. And so that right there was like probably my only gripe with it, because when it ended, when the episode ended, to me, I had no idea that much time had passed. So I was like certainly shocked by that. But overall, I cannot wait to hear what you thought about this. And please do not forget to like and subscribe, because it really helps me out. But as always, you guys take it easy, and I will see you all next time.